This webinar was presented live during March 2024. This webinar is focused on staff qualifications and understanding the training requirements for early learning programs. Today's focus will be on the training requirements. Staff qualifications refers to the hiring and pre-service requirements, training requirements, and the education requirements. Today, our focus will be on the requirements related to training. First, let's look at what we know about training. There are 3 regulations in the WAC that reference training. This includes Section 0105 pre-service requirements. 0105 includes licensing orientation, portable background checks, and tuberculosis testing. This includes Section 0106 training requirements. 0106 includes initial basics training, also known as childcare basics, and other health and safety trainings that are required. We will go into more of these later. This also includes Section 0107 in-service training. We'll wrap up our time together by discussing the various ongoing training requirements. WAC 110-300-0105 outlines the pre-service requirements. It highlights who must have completed a background check and have their recorded tuberculosis testing. Remember that all staff records are maintained in our electronic workforce registry, Merit. All training needs to be recorded there, including these pre-service requirements. The licensing orientation must be completed by specific roles prior to applying for a license and after being promoted into a role that requires licensing orientation. This licensing orientation can be found on the DCYF online training site. Once it has been recorded, it will be marked as recorded in Merit under the Other Training section of your professional record. If you have a licensing dashboard, all 3 of these requirements are reflected on the dashboard under the pre-service status bar. Here's a quick look of the licensing dashboard and the pre-service status bar. Here you can see where you can find a status of meeting these pre-service requirements, including licensing orientation, portable background check, and tuberculosis testing. This information is pulled from other areas of your professional record and Merit. So if something is missing, please reach out to our Merit navigation team for support. The health and safety training requirements are outlined in WAC 110-300-0106. This includes trainings like childcare basics, CPR and first aid, bloodborne pathogens, food handler's permit, and safe sleep. Not everyone has to complete these trainings, and they all have different timelines of when they need to be completed by. For an example, childcare basics must be completed by all early learning roles with staff qualifications. This includes the family home licensee, center director, assistant director, program supervisor, lead teacher, assistant teacher, and aide. This training must be completed prior to being granted a license, prior to working unsupervised with children, and within 90 days upon hire. There are multiple options to meet this requirement that we'll cover shortly. First aid and CPR must be completed by the following roles: family home licensee, center director, assistant director, program supervisor, lead teacher, and assistant teacher prior to working unsupervised with children. This training is offered by the Imagine Institute as well as local agencies within the community. Bloodborne pathogens must be completed by anyone who is directly caring for children prior to being granted a license or working with the children. Local agencies in the community offer this training, and it is often included in the first aid training. Food handler's permit must be completed by anyone who is preparing or serving food to the children. This does include volunteers as well. This training is completed through Washington's Department of Health. Safe sleep is a mandatory training that must be completed prior to being granted a license or caring for infants. The only training that meets this training requirement is the Safe Sleep training that is available on our DCYF online training site. This must be completed by all early learning programs that are licensed for infants. Volunteers only need to complete this training if they are volunteering in an infant classroom. The last couple slides for our health and safety trainings do require renewal. Please check out our training requirements and completion timeline document for renewal requirements. Training requirements for volunteers. There are two types of volunteers, ongoing and occasional. The training requirements are based on the type of volunteer and which classroom they are volunteering in. For example, an ongoing volunteer may be a household member who is frequently counted in ratio, but is not paid. They would need to complete the listed training requirements and have a cleared background check. An occasional volunteer may be a high school or college student observing a program for school. If they are not serving food and are not in the infant room, they would not need to complete any trainings. If you have specific questions about the volunteers in your program, please reach out to your local licensor for support. Here is a quick look of the licensing dashboard and the training status bar. Here you can see where you can find bloodborne pathogens, childcare basics, CPR, first aid, and food handler's permit. This information is pulled from your health and safety training section of your professional record in Merit. If something is missing, you will need to either self-report completion of your health and safety training or connect with your trainer to ensure that your childcare basics training completion has been recorded accurately. There are additional trainings listed in WAC 110-300-0106. These 5 trainings, including recognizing and reporting abuse, emergency preparedness, serving children experiencing homelessness, prevention of shaken baby syndrome, and medication management, are included in childcare basics. So as long as childcare basics is complete, which remember is required by all early learning roles other than the volunteer, these individual trainings do not need to be individually completed or recorded in Merit. As I mentioned previously, there are multiple ways to meet childcare basics. If you complete any one of these approved options, then you would meet the childcare basics training requirement. If you are not familiar with childcare basics, also known as CCB for short, it is a 30-hour training that serves as a foundational training for health, safety, interactions, and more. This curriculum meets part of the health and safety requirements for educators working in licensed facilities, including the trainings that we just covered in the previous slide. Alternative options for meeting childcare basics include ECED and 107, the health, safety, and nutrition course that is a part of the initial ECE certificate, ECE and 100, which is childcare basics offered at the college, having 12 or more ECE and or ECE school-age combined credits recorded in Merit, plus completing the individual health and safety training modules. And DCYF also has a partnership with Head Start, ECAP, and school districts. If you are wondering if you've met the childcare basics training requirement and cannot find this within your Merit account, please reach out to our Merit navigation team. If you are interested in the partnership with Head Start, ECAP, and school district programs, please reach out to our training team at training@dcyf.wa.gov. Childcare basics can be found using the Find Training tool in Merit, In your search, please keep in mind that childcare is listed as 2 words for this training name. CCB is offered in person, virtually live, and online. Please make sure to check all tabs as indicated in the purple arrow to see all available options. When you find a training that works for your schedule, you can register directly with the organization through the link listed as the registration website as indicated with the yellow arrows. We recognize that the cohorts available on our DCYF online training site fill up quickly. As we continue to expand access to these no-cost trainings, please note that you can complete childcare basics in any of the approved methods. Remember, your childcare basics completion can be found under your training history and merit under the initial training section, as well as under the training status bar on your licensing dashboard. The Enhancing Quality of Early Learning Training Series, known as EQUAL for short, is a 20-hour training that is completed after childcare basics. This training can be completed over the course of 2 years and fulfills the in-service training requirement for that year. EQUAL builds on the content learned in childcare basics, and as I stated, it's completed over the course of 2 years. Year 1 has 2 modules that are 5 hours each for a total of 10 hours. Part 1 is culturally responsive practices and responsive caregiving, and Part 2 is brain building and executive function. Year 2 also has 2 modules that are 5 hours each for an additional 10 hours. Part 1 is engaging environments and interactions, and Part 2 is positive behavior supports. When completing EQUAL, you do not need to complete separate in-service hours. So who needs to complete EQUAL is based on a couple of things. If you were hired or promoted into your role after August 1st, 2019, you will need to complete EQUAL. This includes assistant teachers, lead teachers, family home licensees, assistant directors, program supervisors, and center directors. If you were hired before August 1st, 2019, you do not need to complete EQUAL unless you want to use PACE to meet your job role education. EQUAL is part of PACE, so again, if you are going the PACE route, regardless of when you were hired or promoted into your role, you will need to complete EQUAL. So again, if you were hired or promoted after August 1st, 2019 in one of the named roles, you will need to complete PACE. This is a visual representation of when EQUAL is completed. First, an individual must complete childcare basics within 90 days of hire. Over the next 2 calendar years, they would complete the EQUAL series. After completing EQUAL, they would move on to their annual in-service training. Like childcare basics, EQUAL can be found using the Find Training tool in Merit. EQUAL is offered in person, virtually live, and online. Individuals will need to check all tabs to see all available options. When you find a training that works for your schedule, you can register directly with the organization through the link listed on the registration website. See the yellow arrows on the right. Again, we are working with our partners to increase offerings of EQUAL. Continue to look at Merit to find available trainings. While EQUAL is not found on the dashboard at this time, we hope that it will be in the future. In the meantime, you can find EQUAL recorded under the Annual Continuing Education section in Merit. Equal must be completed within 30 months of hire or being promoted into a role that requires equal. We do have some equivalent options for meeting equal. These equivalent options include the Washington State ECE Short Certificate or higher. This includes all DCYF recognized education credential equivalents that are listed under the credit-bearing column of the equivalent options for education guide. DCYF also has a partnership with ECAP, Head Start, and school districts for equal. If you are interested in learning more about this partnership, please reach out to training@dcyf.wa.gov. Please keep in mind that if an individual is working towards their short certificate or one of the other approved alternatives, it must be completed by the end of those first 36 months of hire and must be recorded in merit. And we will continue to work towards having an indicator in merit that will easily show that equal has been met, whether it's through the training itself, an equivalent, and make that indication clear. WAC 110-300-0107 outlines the in-service requirements for licensed early learning providers. The in-service requirement varies by role, but can include 10 hours of annual training, equal, and the leadership practice training. In-service training can be met through state-approved training, such as those found in merit under the Find Training tab. Training offered by other training providers, such as national conferences or special events, and also through college coursework. Training not associated with our state-approved trainers must be aligned with our state competencies to be awarded in-service hours. To inquire about these trainings, please submit a continuing education proposal in merit. Annual in-service hours are not found on the licensing dashboard. Instead, you can find the trainings that you have completed under your annual continuing education training section. There you have options to filter your completed trainings by training year, which include the calendar year, fiscal year, or a specific date range. If you think a training is missing, please connect with your trainer or connect with our merit navigation team. Additionally found in WAC 110-300-0107 is the leadership practices requirement. Family home licensees, center directors, assistant directors, and program supervisors need to complete a minimum of 10 hours of in-service training on leadership practices every 36 months. These trainings can be any approved state-approved training or training submitted for in-service hours that includes the competencies, program planning and development, and professional development and leadership. These training competencies can be completed during one or spread out across the 3 years. It is totally personal preference. Once this has been completed, please keep in mind that this is an ongoing requirement and will need to be met every 3 years. At this time, all trainings that meet the leadership practice training requirement are found under the annual continuing education training section. To determine if your training counts, you will need to look at the competencies included, such as those shown here on the slide. Remember, these competency areas are to be met every 3 years, so you can adjust your date range to see the rolling 3-year time frame if that's helpful. WAC does state that up to 5 in-service training hours that exceed the 10-hour requirement can be carried over from one calendar year to the next calendar year. If this is something you would ever need to do, this will be tracked manually by you and your licensor, as this is not something that Merit tracks at this time. For example, if I completed 15 hours of training last year because I found something interesting, I could essentially roll over up to 5 of those hours for 2024. Then this year, I would only need to complete 5 additional hours to meet my in-service requirement for the year. Again, please connect with your licensor if this is something you are interested in. There are many helpful resources available on the DCYF website. A few related to training specifically include the Training Requirements Guide for Early Learning Providers, the Training Requirements and Completion Timeline, and the Completing Childcare Basics Guide. Get connected with the team. If you haven't already, you can sign up for our Early Learning Division newsletter. We also have a place on our DCYF web pages that allows you to watch any webinars that you may have missed or want to watch again. If you have any follow-up questions, please reach out to our Merit Navigation team. You can reach them by sending an email to merit@dcyf.wa.gov or by calling 1-866-482-4325 and select option 5. Thank you for watching. We look forward to connecting with you again.